Hello everybody, this is ManuS and welcome back to my very first open beta Legends of Runeterra deck tech. The last deck tech's been a while, they were from the preview patches, and I've been hard at work testing and climbing and grinding to bring you guys the latest Runeterra tech. And today I want to share with you my current version of spiders and how I tuned it to adjust it a bit. It's from the philosophy similar to what Astrogation used to hit Master. It's a more aggressive take, not a fan of like the weird, big, gimmicky version that Pokervak played, for example, that has a lot of weird numbers and weird like non-aggressive cards. It's like, doesn't really know whether it wants to be mid-range or aggro, and yeah, so I was working on something more streamlined and it came out to something similar from Astrogation. I adopted some elements of his list that I liked, and yeah, have some differing opinions on a couple of others, and I will share them with you in a moment. So let's take a look at the list, and then as usual, I'll take it to battle in a couple of ranked games to show it in action. And of course you can find the deck code in the description down below, as well as a link to my Mobalytics for the deck, which I may update in the future, so that will usually be the most recent version that you will find on the Mobalytics link. Alright, so let's talk about the deck. So first off, we have our early drops. 2 Crawling Sensation, 3 Hapless Aristocrat, 3 Legion Rearguard, and 3 Precious Pet. Let's talk about these cards. So Crawling Sensation is great. It gives you 2 spiders, so it gives you more bodies for your Skitterer, for your 5-drop spider that we'll talk about in a moment, and also just bodies to use Brother's Bond on, or to flip your ELISE, to level up your ELISE. Only 2 because the card can be a bit low impact, it's just 1/1s, and because it has this condition of requiring an ally to die, so you can't just play a turn 1, make 2 spiders, then the card would be super nuts. But it's still a very good card, and 2 seems like a good number. Then we have Hapless Aristocrat. Other lists like Astrogation run Legion Saboteur in this slot, which I think is really, really bad right now. I like Saboteur in the sense that it's a high power level, but it just lines up so poorly right now. There's a million 1/1s that people can throw away. There are Aristocrats, there are Spider tokens, there are Omen Hawks and Mentors that opponents just want to use to trump block or value trade. So you really don't want to play into that with like 2/1s that die to this sort of stuff without generating value, and like dealing 1 damage to the opponent on offense is not enough value. The deck is not that hyper aggressive, and even if it was, I wouldn't play the card probably. I think basically you can't play 2/1s that can be blocked by this sort of stuff and don't generate enough value to make up for it. Same goes for like Withering Wail, Vile Feast. There's just a myriad of things that really punishes being 1 health right now. So yeah, 2/1s are really not good. And Aristocrat's just very robust. A solid Brother's Bond target. It's then a 3/1 that the opponent, if they get rid of it, just is sticky and sticks around as a spider. It's also long-term an additional spider, which matters for mentioned reasons of spider synergies. It also is something that leaves a body after a sweeper like Avalanche, which can be nice. It's also particularly good against opposing 1/1s, like all the 1/1s that I mentioned, or just opponents that still play 2/1s like Saboteur. Like if you play the Mirror, Aristocrat is like a million times better than Saboteur, and particularly good against Saboteur. So yeah, Aristocrat over Saboteur is a very easy choice in my opinion. Then we have Rearguard. The card is not quite as good right now as I initially thought, but it still hits really hard and at least like trades even with the full Aristocrat over 2 turns. Even though you take a damage theoretically because you can't block the spider on their turn in the process, so you're basically trading even in cards and take 1 damage potentially. But yeah, in matchups where the opponent doesn't have this luxury, it still hits really, really hard, and especially against like more controlling decks when they don't have like the aristocrat turn 1, this gets in a lot of pressure, and the deck is an aggro deck and wants to pressure the opponent, and depending on the matchup, this is your best turn 1 play. And the other option on turn 1 is Precious Pet, which is overall your best 1-drop because it's really hard to block in the early game. It guarantees damage even if the opponent has like a 1/1 early, so it gets damage in, but it is fragile because it has the 1 health issue, not in combat, but still against stuff like Vile Feast and Withering Veil and stuff. But that's less bad because they cost more than Pet, and they still and they also happen later. Although Vile Feast in particular is still pretty bad because sure it costs 1 mana more, but it's a 2-for-1. They get a token out of it and kill the Pet, and the token does a lot against our deck because we have a lot of 1/1s. And it also gains them alive. So it still trades kind of poorly against Vile Feast, but it's okay because it's at least cheaper than Vile Feast, making the trade bearable. Because we gain some tempo out of it, sort of. Alright, then we have the 2-drops. I'll talk about the spells afterwards, after the units. We have Arachnoid Horror, just a very solid spider. It's a 3/2 for 2, so it's a solid raid. Kind of like Rearguard, but it can block and it can attack, and it has Fearsome, and it's a spider. So it benefits from the spider buffs. It helps Elise flip, like level up, and it has Fearsome, which is actually really, really good. Fearsome is kind of like elusive, almost better in a way, because there's a lot of elusive around. And a lot of the elusives can't actually block Fearsomes because they are 2 attack. So this is a really good way of getting damage in early. And Fearsome, I think, is one of the reasons why Spiders is one of the best, if not the best, aggro deck, and one of the best decks right now. Like one of the top decks, the decks to beat, is the whole Fearsome mechanic, and that the deck has a lot of it. So yeah, Fearsome, really good. Not super fancy, but it just does the job. It just has a lot of things going for it, being a spider, being a solid aggressive body, and having Fearsome. Then we have Elise, the primary champion of the deck. Just a really good champion. Once again, as I explained, Fearsome is really good, makes it a lot easier with Elise to get in early. Then she makes the spider token on attack that either deals the damage to basically a unit of the opponent's choice, or gives you a 1/1 spider and deals the damage to the opponent. So both is pretty good. And yeah, it's a 2/3, so she's fairly robust. She doesn't die to Avalanche, which is pretty important, and stuff like Mystic Shot. And doesn't die as easy in combat either. Sometimes she can like block. In a lot of matchups you only want to get like 1 damage on her, so she can still like in the mirror block a 1/1, but not more, so she doesn't get Vile Feasted. And once she levels up, she is a beast. Like all your spiders get Fearsome. We already mentioned how good Fearsome is, and if all your spiders, even your like tokens and house spiders, are Fearsome, it's really, really good and becomes really hard for the opponent to block, especially in conjunction with Challenger, where then your 1/1s can challenge the units that could block Fearsome units, and suddenly the opponent is pretty dead pretty quick. So you want to make sure that your Elise flips if you can. Play a bit conservative, don't lose her too aggressively in a lot of matchups, especially against elusives. She's very key because the Challenger allows you to deal with their elusives, or like put their lifesteal Kinku Lifeblade at the end, so they die before they gain the life from Lifeblade and stuff like that. So same in the mirror. In the mirror she's also a powerhouse. So try and play a bit around the opponent's removal and try to set her up to level up right away. And of course her spell is very solid, although I rarely find myself using this spell because it's just so much more valuable to have additional Elise in hand, even after she leveled up, because she still dies reasonably easy. Sometimes you have to trade her with challenge into something, and then having backup Elise is so good. So I would try to avoid using this spell and rather keep the second Elise unless it's super critical to get the tokens. Next we have House Spider. Nothing fancy, but it's a 2-for-1. It's 3 damage for 2 mana, just like Echnoid Horror, just a lot weaker because it doesn't have Fearsome, but on an empty board it attacks for 3 nonetheless, and it's 2 spiders in 1 card, just like Crawling Sensation, which helps ELISE, and is also good once ELISE is flipped. It's also good with Frenzied, Skitterer, and the 5-drop. So just a solid role player, nothing too fancy, but it just kind of ties the whole spider synergies together and gives you enough critical mass of spiders. Then we have Frenzied Skitterer. This is one of the really good payoff cards of being in spiders. Just gives you these swing turns on offense or defense. It's another fearsome unit, which we already mentioned multiple times how good it is. So yeah, just does a lot. Also, the -1, -0 on the enemies can be particularly nice if you have Challenger with ELISE, so you can pick stuff off for free or kill stuff that you otherwise would trade with without trading and stuff like that. So just a really powerful card. You can also play it on defense if the opponent is ahead to buy yourself some breathing room and gain back momentum. Then I have one Callista currently over the 3rd Darius. 3 Darius can be a bit clunky and drawing multiples can be awkward. But I'm not 100% sure on that part, but Fearsome has been really, really good, and Callista has Fearsome and is a pretty hard-hitting Fearsome threat, effectively hitting for 6 for like a 3-mana unit. So you just play it on your 2-drop that usually has Fearsome as well, and then you get in for like 6 extra damage, which is huge. If she flips, she's also really good, and often you play her late enough that, if I'm not mistaken, I think Avalanche resolves in order the units were played. So if you have like 3 units that die to Avalanche that you played before Callista, like a 1-drop and a House Spider, then you play Callista on 3. I think she flips, it hasn't happened yet, but I think she flips and like she levels up and survives Avalanche as a 5/1, which is really huge. And then on the next attack, she brings back, say, the House Spider that you target, which then hits the opponent for 9, and you get the token from House Spider again. So there are a lot of really nice synergies. She's a bit fragile at 4/2, because if you can't set up what I just mentioned, Avalanche eats her with the rest of the board, and opponents that can block Fearsome always trade with her and so on, and she dies to stuff like Mystic Shot. So she's not like super strong, which is why there's only 1, but the deck wouldn't mind like an additional 3, because it only had like the 3 Skitterers as units on 3, and yeah, I like that. I've been pretty happy with her. But yeah, if you don't have her or don't like her, she doesn't play well for you, just probably go back to like the 3rd Darius or another like flex slot. This is one of the more flexible slots, but yeah, I've been liking her. Then we have 2 Might. Wait, we want to talk about the spells in a moment. We have 3 Crowd Favored. This is another one of the huge payoff cards for the Spider deck, since the deck produces a lot of bodies, because ELISE creates extra bodies, House Spider creates extra bodies, Aristocrat creates extra bodies, making it pretty easy for this to be a 5/5 or 6/6, and often even a 7/7. And Overwhelm is really, really strong, and similarly good to Fearsome, because it's also really good against these 1/1s and 2/1s and 2/2s that otherwise chump block your bigger stuff, because Fearsome they can't block at all, but this they can block, but they can't chump block it. So if a 1/1 blocks a 6/6 Crowd Favorite, doesn't matter, they still take 5. And Crowd Favorite goes to like a 6/5, which isn't even a big deal. So yeah, Crowd Favorite, super powerful, also really good to play into like small sweepers like Avalanche and Withering Wail, because the opponent can't deal with it. There are not a lot of good hard answers to this, like Vengeance costs 7. Sure, you can bounce it with Will of Ionia, but then it comes back. So this is a really annoying, really powerful threat, and one of the big reasons why the deck is so good in my opinion. This is one of the like haymakers. You drop this on 4 as a 6/6 or 7/7, and the opponent is just like in a world of hurt. 5/5 is still solid, but can sometimes be fairly manageable between like either trading or like double trading with it, and not taking that much damage. But 6/6 or 7/7 is where it gets really, really nasty. Then we have the 5-drop Arachnoid Host. It's a 5-cost 5/3. Grants all your other spiders +2/+0, turning all your like useless 1/1s into real threats. And just a huge swing turn. The downside of this is for a 5-drop, not being fast, being like a slow spell, is awkward because you can't open attack with it. But it's still really powerful. It doesn't die to Avalanche, which is important. So it gives your board some stickiness against those sorts of decks. The problem with fast spells here, there is an interesting alternative, Decisive Maneuver. Let me show it to you. Decisive Maneuver, which I actually quite like. The problem with Decisive Maneuver is there's still quite a lot of deny, and the deck's pretty good against deny, but Decisive Maneuver plays massively into deny, and if you make an attack depending on your Decisive Maneuver to resolve, like you need the pump to either kill the opponent or win trades, and like need to stun the unit that blocked your Darius or crowd favorite so they can fully overwhelm, and then the opponent denies it, it can be as game losing for you as it can be game winning if it resolves, and that is really awkward. But if there isn't a lot of deny that you are facing, this could be a lot better than Arachnoid Host, because it allows you to open attack. It's much better against like controlling decks where you often want to open attack to invalidate their mana on their turn, to impact combat, and then just kill them before they even get the chance to use their mana that turn. And the card is a really powerful open attack tool, and also a very decent defense tool, because you can suddenly stun their biggest attacker and make really good trades into their other stuff with your inferior spiderlings. But yeah, until then, Arachnoid Host has been fine. That's one of the two things that I have adopted from Astrogation, and I've been fairly happy with, since the deck plays a bit more at a medium aggressive speed and not like super hyper aggressive as some of the decks that I tried during the preview patch. We have Darius. Astrogation had 3 of these. I only have 2. The card can be a bit clunky. I liked the Callista as 6th champion to give you some mid-game punch. And yeah, this is just like the top-end finisher, more overwhelm threats. You usually want to make sure to put this as your last attacker in the attack order, so that even if the opponent isn't at 10 or less yet and Darius isn't flipped, that you can often make him flip by the time he hits the opponent on the attack with your attackers before him dealing damage to the opponent to put him into level up range. And yeah, he's just a 10-5 overwhelm, hits the opponent really hard. There's not a lot of like fast answers to this. Basically Will of Ionia to delay him. Vengeance costs 1 more and is only in 1 color, so freeze is often like one of the best ways to handle him, and even then the opponent often doesn't have a unit to trade with him, so they can only damage him, not take damage, and then the next time they trade, they still take a lot of damage, unless they have another freeze and stuff like that. The card can be a bit slow, and but it just, yeah, gives the deck the potential to kind of overload the opponent, especially if you already have a crowd favorite out, and then like on 6 to drop a Darius and attack with both. It's going to be really hard for the opponent to defend unless they have a few very specific tools, like freeze, for example. Alright, let's talk about the spells. I have, as pump spells, 3 Mark of the Isle, 3 Brothers Bond, and 2 Might. Astrogation had 3 Might and 2 Mark of the Isle, and otherwise the same configuration. I really disagree with that. Like, Mark of the Isle has been amazing. The fact that it's so cheap is so good. You can regularly trade like 1/1s versus real units, either on defense or if the opponent just wants to eat them for free. And doing that for 1 is a lot better than for 3. The other thing is, this costing 1 and giving health means that you can actually counter damage spells with this. Like I've countered Black Spears, Mystic Shots, Avalanches and all that stuff on offense. Like the opponent tries to kill your unit, you Mag of the Isles and you still get one attack in, which then deals like 5-6 damage, where you otherwise would deal 0. Which does as much or more a lot of the time as, say, Might with the Overwhelm would do. Since Overwhelm really doesn't work that well in that deck. Most of the units, the big units already have Overwhelm, other than the host. And yeah, Mark of the Isles being so cheap also makes it a lot easier to multi-spell in critical turns. And it's also particularly good in the mirror because of the fearsome. Then the opponent attacks with the ELISE. You just Mark of the Isles, a 1/1 like an Aristocrat or Spider token, and eat the ELISE and stuff like that. Like Mark of the Isles is just super flexible and really, really good. And yeah, Might is just a lot more situational and really clunky, and drawing, I much rather draw multiple Mark of the Isles than multiple Mights, so I really recommend like 3 Mark and 2 Might. But yeah, Might has still been decent, especially in conjunction with Might. Like it's still better to draw like a Mark and a Might a lot of the time than 2 Marks, because then you suddenly can like, I don't know, Mark plus Might a Callista that has been blocked by like a 2/2, and suddenly the opponent takes like 8 extra damage instead of like 6 that he would with like 2 Marks and stuff like that. And last but not least, I have one NOXIAN Guillotine. Astrogation and similar lists run a Whirling Death here, which makes a battling ally strike a battling enemy. Not a big fan of that. We don't have that many units that are good at striking, because a lot of our units are fairly small. And the thing is, one of the worst cards for this deck to face is Fiora, and it's becoming more and more popular. And Whirling Death is not good at dealing with Fiora. NOXIAN Guillotine, however, is very good at dealing with Fiora. Like these decks that go like turn 3 Fiora, stand alone on it, and then start eating away at your stuff. NOXIAN Guillotine is the perfect counter to Fiora, because it beats all their like their barrier stuff that and their pump stuff that would keep Whirling Death in check, but Fiora basically always has damage on her. There's like some lists that have like one healing potion that can maybe counter a Guillotine if it heals all the damage on Fiora. But yeah, NOXIAN Guillotine, really good at dealing with Fiora, and also just randomly good at 2-for-1ing, or sometimes in the later games 3-for-1ing the opponent, because we have all these 1/1 spiders, so there's a lot of damage on a lot of opposing units, so it's often easy to kill like 2 things with this and gain a bunch of value. So if I want like one of removal, it has to be Guillotine, especially to be able to beat yeah, the worst card against us. Since if the opponent doesn't do anything for the first 2 turns, then plays Fiora and stand alone on it and eat something of ours, and then we guillotine it, that is often enough to like turn the game in our favor and beat them, especially if they don't have a second Fiora as backup. So yeah, that's a nice tech that I've come up with, and I've seen like other people run more and more. I didn't like it initially when Pokervac had it, because it just wasn't necessary, and I don't think this deck wants any removal at all, really. But Fiora in particular is like a really big reason to run Guillotine, and the fact that it's like always fine against other stuff that has units basically, so it's never terrible and can help you win a game against the Fiora decks that you otherwise wouldn't. And yeah, that's the list. No stuff like Black Spear or Glimpse or Vile Feast, because they are all yeah, too dirtily, not aggressive enough. Like Vile Feast is fine in the mirror, but not that great, since it doesn't kill like the important stuff. It's just like a decent value play. Like 6-0 had 1 Vile Feast over the 3rd Darius, I assume because he didn't have the 3rd Darius yet, if I had to guess. And that was just something that he had lying around. And I would probably play like a 3rd Might before playing like a single Vile Feast in this list, for example, or like a crawling sensation. Not sure. So yeah, this is the list. It's basically a tuned version of the like kind of standard aggressive list that people are running right now. There are some interesting ideas to mess around with, like more fearsome with Racecaller and Mistwraith that people have been trying. A guy named Andrew, don't know what his in-game name is, on Discord has been like messing around with this idea, and Swim has been picking it up and playing it on stream. That's something that I might explore once I have the cards. As you can see, I'm missing 2 Mistwraiths and 2 Racecallers, and yeah, gonna explore that direction next. But for your typical aggressive spider list, this is what I recommend. It's just a bit more refined, more tuned version of what people have been having success with and reaching master, like Astrogation or 6-0, to name 2 bigger names. And just fixing some of the soft spots in the list, like Aristocrat over Saboteur, making the deck slightly less clunky with Callista over Darius, and adjusting the pump configuration and Guillotine over Whirling Deaths to deal with Fiora. Alright, this is the list. Hope you guys enjoyed the in-depth explanation and rundown. If you still have any questions or feedback, let me know in the comments down below. And before we dive into a couple of ranked games and Platinum, please, if you enjoy the content, hit the subscribe button down below, turn on the notification icon, leave a like, leave a comment, share it with your friends, and check the description for more info. And of course, if you want to help support us content creators, make sure to whitelist YouTube on your adblock or just turn off your adblock. It's a great and free way to help your favorite content creators. Alright, that's it. I'll see you in a moment with the game number 1. Stay tuned.